Now, okay, I guess everybody can see me. Hopefully, people are still there wanting to watch this segment live because I know we have been trying to get this Google Hangout working, which has new updates. It's a whole new game now, so it took us a while, but as promised, he is here today, Mr. Vaughn Manley, to talk about foreign settlements in Vedic astrology. And this is going to be through Parashara system of showing you the timing of you either settling in foreign lands or visiting foreign lands. So without further ado, let me bring Vaughn Manley.
Thanks, Kapil. It's always a pleasure to be here and talk with everybody. So
absolutely,
let's dive in. So foreign settlement. You know, Vedic astrology is most useful for seeing events. I mean, we should be able to see a major event like foreign settlement. If we're not, then there's got to be something wrong either with the birth time or something we haven't understood. I mean, if you're trying to predict, say, if it's likely you're going to have, say, you have a dinner engagement. You're trying to figure out where the person is going to take you, and you're using astrology for something as subtle as that. You're trying to figure out, does this look like Korean food on Friday night? You know, looking at your chart, or Mexican food. You know, it's just pretty subtle. But something as major as moving to a foreign country. I mean, this is a major life change. And so you should be able to see that major event. I mean, yes, marriage is important. You know, the major events as shown by the Kendra houses. You know, moving is the 4th house. 7th house, marriage, of course, career. And 1st house also for health. So we should be able to see major events quite easily. And so hopefully today we'll make it even clearer.
Okay.
With some parameters. I mean, if you don't know what you're looking for, then that's the place to begin. What are we looking for? So foreign settlement is most easily seen, or most often seen, I should say, by the influences of the 12th house, 12th lord, and the Rahu-Ketu axis. Does make sense?
Yeah.
So you could say 12th house, 12th lord. So we're looking at house, lord, and karaka. So for foreign settlement, Rahu and Ketu, these are the unorthodox planets. We did a class, I think one of our last classes was on the sudden change as brought about by Rahu and Ketu. So a major change can happen under the influence of Rahu and Ketu, but also an influence of connection with foreigners, foreign places, exotic, faraway places, Rahu and Ketu. The Rahu-Ketu axis is very important to follow. And between Rahu and Ketu, I most often see the influence of Rahu. But we'll show, maybe we'll get to some examples where definitely Ketu is an influence as well. So Rahu and Ketu share qualities. Even though they are polar opposites, they share qualities of, I mean, most of their qualities are opposite. Rahu, an extrovert, Ketu, an introvert. Rahu, materialist, Ketu, spiritual, and spiritualist, you could say, etc. But they also are both, subtle. They represent subtle energy, and they also both represent unorthodoxy. And so, I mean, they're mysterious. So they can represent really, collectively, this Rahu-Ketu axis can represent strange, unusual, out of character, out of normal life kinds of events. So certainly Rahu and Ketu we need to look at. You know, and also secondarily, Jupiter. Jupiter represents foreign travel. It's a karaka of the 9th house. And so Jupiter, I've also seen Jupiter's influence. I mean, you know, sometimes people will go to a foreign country as a travel, initially, you know, for travel purposes. Or say a stint at, say, a job, they have a project, with their company, but they're only going to be there 6 months. They're not settling abroad. So that often is seen more by the influence of Jupiter. Also, Jupiter's influence as the karaka of education, along with Mercury. And Jupiter being the karaka, especially of the ninth house, meaning higher education, you also see Jupiter's influence, say, for people who are moving to a foreign country for the purpose of higher education, getting an MBA, getting
Right.
so engineering degree abroad, and so I have this very very weird lifestyle. I live in Hawaii, where there are no Indians, hardly. I mean, I have a few Indian friends, but I'm always talking to people on the phone who are Indians, it seems like, and most of them are people who have relocated, immigrated to the United States or to Western country, maybe Australia, Canada, England, etc., Europe. So, so I've seen a lot of cases. I mean, I would say a high percentage of the readings that I do are with people that have moved abroad. So I've collected quite a large database. So we'll talk about some of these. We'll see some examples. We'll look at examples of celebrities. First of all, just to show these principles. So, okay, so we talked about the 12th house, 12th lord, Rahu, Ketu. We talked about Jupiter, Rahu, Ketu, and Jupiter. Those three is karakas. So that means that the dashas of a dasha of a planet who is the 12th lord, the dasha of a planet who is somehow connected with the 12th house, aspecting the 12th house, located in the 12th house, aspected by the 12th lord, aspecting 12th house, etc. So some connection with the 12th house or 12th lord or the karaka. So we're looking at the dashas, right? The dashas are like dynamic indication. Dynamic meaning they're changing, rather than static.
Yeah.
I mean, static is just a natal chart interpretation. I mean, yes, there should be some predisposed combinations, or combinations that would predispose somebody to foreign settlement. One that I often see is just simply Rahu and Ketu are somehow connected with the personality indicators. They're in the ascendant. They're connected with the ascendant lord. They're connected with the moon or the sun. So those four I like to call personality indicators, representing kind of the core of the chart, core qualities that we're going to derive personality from and main character traits from. So Rahu and Ketu's influence, meaning that people could, from an early age, have an interest in going abroad. Then they hit the right dasha, and boom, you've got it happening in their life. But yes, a predisposition towards travel abroad. The other indication, which is less talked about perhaps, is malefics affecting the fourth house, fourth lord, the moon, part of the fourth house. And why is that? Because fourth house, fourth lord, moon represents our native home, and our native place, our home, our ancestry, our mother, our upbringing. So if there are malefics there, then a person could have a break from their past, or break from their ancestry, and that can be an additional factor. Now, another way of looking at it is if there's not a malefics on the fourth house, fourth lord, or the moon, then oftentimes people will not leave their country with this kind of reaction, in a reactionary state of mind. In other words, they're not trying to just get the hell out of there because they hate their country, they don't like their family. They're doing it because of some opportunity. And they're going with heartstrings pulling them back. And I talk to people about this, and I look at their charts. Moon is with Venus or something. Those are planets of more of a heart and a sentimental connection. So they have a close connection with their family, with their mother, their ancestry, their home, native place, etc. Benefics in the fourth house. So they're not going in response to some negative situation at home in their native country. They're going for other reasons, and they could be pulled back under the dashas of the planets that are combining in with those planets. Say if they hit a moon dasha, that could take them back. Moon represents our past and our ancestry, etc. So so foreign settlement for periods of time, permanent foreign settlement. So those are different situations.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because when I also look at foreign settlements, I'm actually looking at the 4th house, 7th house, 9th house, 11th house, and 12th house, because as you know, 7th is Bhavad Bhavam of the 4th, and then so it becomes home away from home. And then 11th house is Bhavad Bhavam of the 12th house, so it shows foreign lands of foreign lands. It's another way of looking, and I found the fact that, you know, these especially in Dasha period, whenever I've seen connection with 7th and 11th, there was a move either through marriage or through business reasons as well. So I wanted to get your opinion on that. If you
for sure, yeah. I mean, the 12th house, I would say, is the primary house to look at.
Yeah.
You know, but there are others. And using Bhava Bhavan makes perfect sense. Yes, definitely. 11th house, 12th from 12th makes good sense. We need to consider that. We also need to consider the 7th house. Yes, because it's the 4th house from the 4th house. The other thing about the 7th house, it is considered a secondary house of foreign residence. And there's some logic. Besides the fact it's the 4th from the 4th, it doesn't necessarily imply moving abroad. Okay. I mean, in other words, the fourth house in and of itself, fourth lord from the 4th house from the 4th house, the 7th house. Because of that, it doesn't necessarily mean travel or residence abroad. It's because the 7th house is the furthest house from the 1st house. So the 7th house is a house of foreign residence. If you look at it's the furthest away. If the 1st house is the eastern horizon, 7th house is western horizon. That's the furthest from your home place.
Exactly. That's the same as last.
So but I mean, 4th house can mean move under the influences of the 4th house. Person can just move across the other side of town. It's not a major move, but yes, under the influence of the 7th house, for sure, they can move abroad. And but they can. It's tricky though, because it's also as the 4th house. From the 4th house, it could just mean a move, and then you got to figure out: is this a major move? Is this a? So you have to add up the predominant influences. Are the prominent influences showing connection with 12th house, 12th lord Rahu, Ketu, under these dashas that they're running, as well as, and then considering these other houses, the 11th, as you mentioned, the 7th, and also simply just the 4th. And we also need to consider the 8th. I've seen, I mean, 8th is just simply a house of upheavals.
Meaning like sudden moves, sudden things, sudden unknown things,
Yeah, something from left field, someone getting an offer, or some dramatic change that could cause one to do something that is dramatic, and that one of the dramatic things can simply be to move abroad. So, I mean, we have to count up these factors. You see influences of the 8th house and the 12th house. Well, that combined could represent moving abroad, especially.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then eclipses, say, on going through the ascendant or the 4th house, can represent dramatic changes with regards to home, regards to one's identity. If you have an eclipse in the ascendant, as I mentioned in that class we did on Rahu and Ketu, the woman had an eclipse going through her ascendant. She totally changed her identity, and as part of that, moved to a foreign country, to Peru. Remember?
Or a relationship.
or a relationship.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought, hey, let's just look at some charts
Yeah,
of
let's
some
look at some
celebrities,
charts. Okay.
and you know, who are famous. Who it's not going to be controversial to use their birth data. It's out there, anyways.
Okay.
And people can. It's always fun to look at celebrities. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I just thought of a few, like
Okay.
Martina Navratilova. Thought we would look at her chart because she's the winningest tennis player of all time.
Right.
You know, one of the most successful female athletes of all time. She won 344 tennis tournaments.
Holy smokes.
I mean, and that includes singles, women's doubles, and mixed doubles. And I mean, that's an outrageous number. I mean, the person with the second highest was 186. I mean,
was it the
yeah.
second one? Was it Steffi Graf?
No, Steffi Graf was third in singles. Third in singles titles.
I see.
But Martina was not as high as third in singles titles, but she did so much with doubles. She always did doubles along with singles. I mean, incredible stamina to be playing all those. At one tournament, playing doubles and singles. Most top tennis players will only play singles because it's just too exhausting. But she has incredible strength and stamina. So yeah, 344 titles. That's just an outrageous number of huge accomplishment. She's definitely touted as one of the most successful tennis players, but she moved abroad at a very young age. I mean, age 19. Well, she was born in Czechoslovakia, and at that time, that was a communist country. It was communist from 1948 till 1989. Wow. So it was very restrictive. I mean, for her to even get out of the country to go to a neighboring country to play in a tournament was a big ordeal. So she got an opportunity to, after she had experienced some success, she got an opportunity to move to the United States. She took it. It was not because of not liking her own country or her family. Her mother actually was a very strong influence in her life. Well, let's look at her chart. Enough of me talking. Rather look at some charts. So here we go. Sure. Okay, so this is a chart of Martina Navratilova. She was born October 18th, 1956. 440 was the given time. Okay. Not 441, 440 and p.m. in Prague, Czechoslovakia. So this gives her 21 degrees, 26 minutes of Pisces ascendant. So just take a look at Pisces first of all. Pisces has the moon, the fifth lord there, aspected by exalted Mercury with no aspects of malefics. And no malefic aspects on the fourth house either, or the fourth lord, other than from Mars. So Mercury gets one malefic aspect from Mars. So fourth lord. But so this is a situation where, yeah, she was moving away from her native place, but not because of not liking her country or people. It was more of a reaction against a communist regime. In any case, very close relationship with her mother, and mother was very instrumental in her. Mother was a professional tennis player, I believe, too, and a coach. Or her father also. Her stepfather became her coach. In any case, after she won Wimbledon for the first time in 1978, the next year they allowed her mother to come. They gave her a two-week pass to leave the country, and that was the first time she'd seen her since September 5th, 1975. So that's when she moved to the U.S. and eventually became a U.S. citizen much later. But So moving to the U.S. permanently and defecting from her country took place September 5th, 1975. So this was in K2 Saturn Dasha. Okay, K2 Saturn Dasha. So now instantly this is a Dasha of K2. So we can have in mind something of a foreign nature could happen under the influence of K2 or the Rahu K2 axis. But look here that K2 is aspected by Saturn, the 12th lord, and Saturn is also the 12th lord from the moon. So doubly significant as a 12th lord because of its dual status as a 12th lord from the ascendant and from the moon.
Yeah.
So very strong likelihood that she could move abroad in K2 Saturn. That's exactly what happened, just right as at the beginning of K2 Saturn, which began September 1st, 1975. She moved September 5th, 1975. So that was a one year, 1 month subdasha of Saturn.
Okay.
So, but now look also at, go down to the third level. Go down to the third level is also Saturn, K2 Saturn. K2 Saturn.
K2
Okay.
Saturn.
Yes. Okay. But now let's look at the D4 chart. So the D, I'll show you why. I mean, yes, I would normally show you. Well, no. Let's stick with the Navamsha. We'll look. I mean, this is showing the potential for foreign travel, but we shouldn't just rely on the natal chart. We should also get confirmation from the Navamsha and the D4 chart, the Chaturtamsha. And so we'll do an interesting look at this. Okay. Okay. So K2 in the Navamsha is in the second house.
Okay.
Unaspected by any planets, right? So, so K2 is also disposited by Saturn. So when Rahu K2 are not aspected by a planet, we need to give a great deal of weight to this dispositor. So Saturn's in the 9th house. The 9th house, as I mentioned, can represent foreign travel, but it becomes clear when we adjust the birth time so that her ascendant changes to the sign of Aquarius. So at 4:44, 4:44. So moving the birth time 4 minutes forward. Her birth time of 4:40 was from memory only. So in the Lotus Rodin system, the Rodin system, it was at A. The birth time was at got the rating of A, not A plus, AA. So there's some possibility. I mean, I think it's realistic to think that her birth time could be 4 minutes later. If that's the case, then look at K2 being in Saturn's sign, disposited by Saturn, and Saturn is the 12th lord. Yeah. Okay, but also what's interesting about this is that this would put Rahu and K2 on the 1st and 7th house axis, and she is a lesbian. So Rahu and K2 can represent unorthodox, unconventional relationships. Yeah. So I mean, she was in, as soon as she came to the United States in her 20s, she was involved with lesbian relationships. So it's been known for a very long time. I mean, she was a pioneer, you might say, in women's lib, along with Billie Jean King in the tennis world. But in any case, this makes sense from that angle. But also, what follows K2 is Venus. So Venus If this is the correct ascendant in the Navamsha, then Venus would be with the Sun, which would be the 7th Lord. Okay, so we'll just bookmark that and say that's a possibility. It's easier to see in the Navamsha that she could have moved under the dasha of K2 Saturn. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's look at the D4 chart. Chaturtamsha. Okay, so now if she was born at 440, her ascendant in the D4 chart would be Virgo.
Okay.
If she and if you look here, you'll see that this is the range of times of the ascendant in that divisional chart. Okay, so from 428 and 15 seconds to 441 and 56 seconds. So this class is a lesson, you could say, also on birth time rectification. We'll just dabble in this because you can't really use the divisional charts with a great deal of confidence always.
Yeah.
Because of the boundary of the ascendant could change.
Exactly.
So that's why I always have the boundary of the ascendant on that visible on the screen. So I always know, is this right on the cusp in the divisional chart? Can I rely on these house lordships and the yogas that are formed in these divisional charts? Maybe yes, maybe no. The cool thing about the D4 chart is such a wide boundary. This is 33 minutes, right? From 428 until, no, I'm sorry, not that long.
It's the
13 minutes.
13 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, 13 minutes. So that's, it can be a lot wider. Pisces is a very short ascendant. But that's, yeah, 13 minutes. It's dividing that divisional chart by 7 degrees, 50 minutes. So that's going to give you a wide range. So for birth time rectification, if I get an event of foreign settlement or move, that's very useful for rectifying the birth time. Okay, now let's look at what happens. So I believe that she's born after 442 because look what happens when you change the birth time to 442, or with the Navamsha made sense to be past 444. So we'll just go to 444. We'll then look at K2. K2 is on the 6th and 12th house axis.
Right.
Right. So then also notice how Saturn is aspecting to 12th house and 12th Lord.
Right.
So that's a lot more than what we were seeing if you're looking at the D4 from the standpoint of Virgo ascendant. Yes, Saturn is aspecting on the 12th house, 6th and 12th house axis. So that's certainly one thing. It's with the 9th Lord. K2's in the 9th house. With the 7th Lord, there's some reason to believe that Virgo makes some sense, but because of the Navamsha and the D4, I would say that Sagittarius ascendant is more accurate. Okay. I would use that. And in any case, I think a lot of people have gotten the notion that you can't use divisional charts because they're not reliable. So I'm not saying, looking at this one event, I'm not saying we can make a full birth time rectification, but we can play with it and work with the divisional charts.
We can get close enough to the most accurate time, with these little things.
Well, we're looking for as astrologers, we're detectives. We're looking for clues. We're not going to get all the clues from the natal chart.
Exactly.
Just forget it. You're not going to be that accurate. You'll be accurate a good portion of the time because the natal chart is so important. But it's I always recommend to look out at the Navamsha. Navamsha is a general chart. Yes, it's marriage, but it also should represent every event, just like the D60, the
Exactly.
Shastriyamsa. You should be, if the Shastriyamsa is correct, the Navamsha is correct, you should be able to see elements of every event. And then the relevant divisional chart, in this case, the D4. So if So this is what I do. I'm just sharing. This is what I often will do, is I'll play with it and see, does this make sense? Is it outrageous? Am I being completely arrogant and to change the birth time with her? I think it's realistic.
But
the time just came from memory, and we're using astrological logic.
But let me ask you also: have you ran into instances where somebody moved, yet it was not confirmed in any of the divisional charts? Or is it always confirmed in the divisional charts when they move?
Well, if birth time is correct, you should be able to see it in the divisional chart, at least a hint of it. There should be some hint of it.
There should be some hint, okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes. There should be some hint of it. It's not as Ken Rao, my teacher, always says, astrology is not a push-button system. I mean, you've got to work at it. It's not going to be the same in every case, and you're always going to make some subjective judgment, and hopefully with experience, with the sincerity of practice, you are working hard, and you are developing good principles and methods for developing accurate predictions.
Right.
And that's the goal, right? If you can't predict, then, I mean, the beauty of being able to have a clear prediction is that you convey that to somebody, and you're helping them connect with their own divine flow in their life.
Exactly.
I mean, people will already have a sense of things, usually. They're going to have a sense, I feel like I've got to go abroad. And then you as an astrologer point out that this timing is very likely the time period, then that helps to confirm a hunch that they already have. I think that we're always so connected to the cosmos that we are getting hunches and hints and intuitions all the time, but people don't trust them. So I think one of the big purposes of astrologers is to help people trust their own guidance, their own flow, and help confirm that through again, astrological logic.
Yeah.
It should make logical sense. The event should make sense in the natal chart. It should make sense in the Navamsha chart to some extent. It should definitely make sense in the relevant divisional chart. Sometimes it makes more sense in the relevant divisional chart. Let's say childbirth sometimes can be clearer in the Saptamsa than in the Navamsha or the Navamsha.
Oh, and that's so true. Saptamsha is like the holy grail of seeing the birth of a child. I've seen that too many times now.
Yeah, that's really true.
You cannot discount that. No way.
Yeah, so it becomes the divisional charts are very important because they are a microscopic look at that particular area. Like you're taking, like say, you're taking the area of childbirth, the 5th house. You're taking that down to a microscopic level and breaking it into 12 houses, and you're
it's pretty much synchronizing a clock for some sort of a time. Like the birth chart is the hour, the Namansha is the minute, and then the other divisional chart is the second. And once the time is synchronized, that's the clock. That's the time of something to happen, pretty much.
Wow, I like that. That's good.
Yeah. It's like, that ticking, that missile is going to launch at this time, and you're figuring out from these minute, hour, and seconds key when is it going to launch. Yeah.
Okay, so let's quickly look at her chart, also the D10 chart.
Yeah.
Dashamsha. This is amazing. Now this is really amazing. She hit a Venus Dasha. And that's what you would expect. It should be really amazing because she did amazing things in her Venus Dasha.
Yeah.
She won her first Grand Slam title, first major title in July 8th, 1978. That was Venus, Venus, Moon. So Venus, Venus, Moon. So Venus is exalted in the 10th house in the D10. Look at the boundary of that ascendant. It's only 5.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we change the birth time to 4:45, then the ascendant would change out of Gemini. So Venus in the 10th house makes very good sense. Why? Because it's the 5th lord. Notice how it's in exchange with Jupiter. So there's a part of Arts and Yoga. Yeah, exactly. So that's 5th and 10th lord. So some people say you can't use yogas in the divisional charts.
Yeah.
I just say, I say you can use yogas in divisional charts as long as you're very aware of that boundary of the ascendant.
Yeah.
You're not becoming arrogant, thinking this has got to be right.
Exactly.
Because I mean, K.R. Rao certainly recommends using yogas in divisional charts, but with caution, because most yogas are formed based on house rulership. Most.
Exactly. Even if you look at the birth chart, she has Viprit Raj Yoga with Venus, and then Venus Mahadasha shows extreme amount of competition, facing competition and enemies, which is pretty much in sports. She was facing a lot of competition.
Yes. Notice the 6th lord Mars. Mars, a planet of competition, 8th house aspect of Mars to Venus, and also Mars is playing a double role as a competitive influence on Venus Mahadasha, because it's the 6th lord, but it's also Mars, planet of competition, but it's the 6th lord. Yeah. So this is, Moon becomes the 6th lord. So 6th house, 3rd and 6th houses, you'll see strong influences for athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, Mars will have a big role too. Okay, but I'm just showing this because why not see how other areas of our life are playing out. But notice that in the Dashamsha chart, this is also the 12th lord in the 10th house, in exchange with the 12th lord, with the 10th lord, I mean. So it's so this is a combination for somebody who can experience great successes in a foreign country.
Yeah.
Or in foreign countries, because of course as a tennis player she's traveling all over. But residence abroad was certainly a big asset to her, an advantage to her.
Exactly.
Okay, so should we look at another example? Okay. So let's look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay, so here we have Gemini ascendant, 25 degrees. He was born July 30th, 1947, 4:10 a.m. in Graz, Australia. Okay, so Schwarzenegger moved to the United States in 1968, in September 1968. So I'm just saying September 15th, 1968, he was in Venus Ketu Dasha. So we're still seeing the Dashas of planets in of Rahu and Ketu in the Dasha sequence. So this is quite obvious in a way. Venus is the 12th lord, Ketu and Rahu on the 12th house axis, 6th and 12th house axis. So no surprises there. I mean, this is the kind of thing that is often so often to be seen. But one thing that's also interesting is notice how Ketu's in the 12th house from the moon.
Yeah.
Ketu's in the 12th house from the moon, and aspected then by the 12th lord, which is Mars.
Yeah.
So he said that he desired to go abroad from a very young age. Notice that his ascendant and his ascendant lord and the fourth lord are in a fourth lord Mercury is in is hemmed in by malefics. So Saturn on one side, Rahu, Mars on the other side.
The Papkartra Yoga.
Papakatara Yoga.
Yeah.
Not only affecting the ascendant, but also the ascendant lord and the fourth lord.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, you could say, yes, there's no malefic influences similar to Martina Navratilova, but you've got to consider that the hemming in, the Papakatara Yoga is influencing the fourth lord.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that makes it uncomfortable. Papakatara Yoga, you're hemmed in. Just think you're hemmed in by planets that are unfriendly to you. And that's the fourth lord and the first lord. So relating to definitely one's early upbringing and ancestry. So he, from age 10, wanted to go abroad. He was not comfortable in his own country. He had bigger ideas.
Yeah.
And so, let's see. Okay, so let's see. That was 1968. Venus, K2, Jupiter. So Jupiter, seventh lord here. And yeah, seventh lord and also aspecting to the ninth house. So Jupiter's influence, again, taking one traveling abroad. Connection with other cultures, Jupiter represents. Multicultural awareness, Jupiter's influence. And you can see how Jupiter tightly aspects the ascendant and the ascendant lord to the exact degree. So that's one reason. He's also had this kind of global awareness of wanting to do something bigger. He thinks big. I mean, God, he became Mr. Universe. Then the next challenge was become the best actor.
Have you seen his watches?
What's that?
Have you seen his watches? He wears like big watches, 60 millimeter, 55 millimeter watches.
I definitely thinks big.
Yeah.
So let's look at the Navamsha. Okay, so K2 Dasha, Venus, K2. Venus
K2 is conjunct the 12th Lord Mars again.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Venus is with the moon, Karka home, and so.
But Venus in the third house obviously is representing movement.
Yes. Yes.
So the movement is happening, and it just in K2 period it activated the 12th house in the birth chart and the mantra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the third house, yes, is similar to the sign of Gemini, so that's movement.
Yeah.
But it's also the 8th house from the 8th house, and so it's also a secondary house of the 8th house, so it can represent change as well.
And in the birth chart, Venus is conjunct the 9th Lord Saturn. So that again influences Venus to get in movement.
Yes. Yes. Yes, so then let's look at the D4. So Venus Mahadasha. Notice how Venus is with Saturn and aspected by 12th Lord. 12th Lord Saturn.
Yeah.
And Saturn becomes 12th Lord also from the moon.
Yeah.
K2 is in the 9th house, house of travel, and aspected by Jupiter. Okay?
Yeah.
So we're seeing confirmation. So it's important to note that this is Saturn, the 12th Lord, aspecting to Venus, the Mahadasha Lord. And he began his life. He began his life in K2 Dasha, but then went right into Venus.
Yeah.
So that's why, from a young age, taking him abroad. Venus being, as you mentioned, with the ninth lord, Saturn in the natal chart.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we look at one more chart? Or are we done?
You
Maybe
know,
we're done.
yeah, I think because the guy could come in anytime
Okay,
now. Yeah,
okay,
and I'm the only one here, so.
sure,
But
sure.
no, this is I
Yeah.
mean, these two charts. I mean, it just shows you the beauty of, what K and Rao has taught you. I mean, just his books also have talked about these scenarios as well. So I mean, it's what can you say? It is the science of light.
Yes, it's a sacred science because you can really help people, as I say, get aligned. And most people live with a great deal of anxiety
Yeah,
and cloudiness, uncertainty, and so if you can see a pattern that is building up, and then you as an astrologer have certainty because you look not only at the natal chart and you're looking from the alternate lugnas, but you're also going to divisional charts, gaining more and more certainty, then you can have definitely a good impact, help them get on the right path, and that's
exactly.
really makes it a divine science then because you're helping them connect with their own soul's path
Hmm.
in this lifetime. So
Instead of
it's a
them
bigger
going,
service.
yeah,
Becomes a bigger service, a bigger potential service for people. Um, you can see with this, remember we said the divisional in the D4 chart for Martina Navratilova, that boundary was 13 minutes. This is now 38 minutes for him.
yeah,
So it depends on the ascendant. The Pisces ascendant, especially where Martina in Prague, Czechoslovakia, high in the higher latitude, made that a very short ascendant. So making all the divisional charts a shorter boundary. So we have to be aware of that. Are we looking at a wide boundary? And at 410, it's more or less in the middle of that time period. So we can have confidence about the D4 chart. So that's one thing I also wanted to convey in this lesson: how to work with divisional charts and not to avoid them just because they're probably inaccurate. Well, play with the birth time a little bit, see what makes sense, use astrological logic. Let's see. Let's go back to.
And I wanted to know, just the Parashara light also has that ability to show degrees on the chart, like you did in this one in Sri Jyotish star.
You mean the chart?
The boundaries, degrees.
Sri Jyotish star and Parashara light will both show boundaries.
Will both? Okay, you're gonna have to show me that. I'll call you later because I like that I see. Because usually I have to manually look at their time 5 minutes back and forward. I'm like, okay, is this things changing or not? Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, wow, that actually makes so much more sense.
That's easy then. Yeah, you can see, is it a cusp issue or not? I mean, sometimes it's like 10 seconds can change the ascendant in a divisional chart, so don't be giving much confidence about that, or especially if you're talking about yogas. You're trying to,
So so this was great information. I mean, it just shows you right there, like about foreign lands, and I like the fact that you used the D4 chart, which is regarding home and home settlements. So
I mean, like I said earlier, if someone gives me an event for a birth time rectification related to home settlement abroad, or just moving or buying a home, I'm like.
Yeah, exactly.
In my hands, I'm excited because that's going to help me out because of the wide boundary of the D4.
Exactly.
Versus say like the D24, a very short boundary. Say events related to education. I work with the D24. We should work with the D24, but that's a very tight boundary. So I use that last to make sure that the ascendant's correct in the D24, but the D4 you can use with much more confidence. The D3 also, since that's going to divide at 30 degrees by 10 degrees each. So that's a very wide boundary also. So
absolutely.
In any case.
So guys, here's the thing. If you want to know when you're going to move to foreign lands, and if you're going to get a job opportunity, are you going to be going for your marriage, or when you're going to be settled, with all the other questions, Remember to visit Mr. Vaughn Paul Manley's website, lightonvedicastrology.com, where you will find tons of his articles and his consultations, so you can get your consultations through him.
Okay. Yeah, and also just add to that is that I'm going to be starting to teach webinar classes.
Okay.
Getting back into teaching, we're going to be doing more writing, finishing the lessons of my course. So.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm still doing readings.
Okay.
But focusing more on teaching and writing. So there'll be more offerings through my website. So sign up for the newsletter to get notifications about those
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, thank you, Kapil. Oh, did you want to talk about Gemini next time?
Yeah.
Or about moving.
Yeah, we can just do Gemini the next class, the Gemini astrology concepts.
On the foreign settlement.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We didn't look at it, another dasha system entirely, another predictive system. Gemini, I mean.
I'm pretty sure Matrika is involved in that.
Indeed, for sure. Matrika. Indeed, you got it, bro.
Great. So we'll set up that time. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, Mr. Vaughn Paul Manley.
Okay. Thank you. Namaste.